us now. Only love.
Welcome back, folks. I'm being honest. I'm not sure I was ready to come back because we were having such an interesting discussion between Freddie and Chris, which we may touch on what they were talking about a little later, but we want Freddie to continue because that was a very valid point that he was making.
Well, see, the point that I wish to really drive home to the Bahamian people is that the more things change, the more they seem to be the same. Because the issues of today in Bahamas 2018, we're having the same issues as it were back at the Burma Road riots, where you have persons of special interest trying to impede on the transportation services coming out of the airport. That is existing today. When we look at what happened to the workers at Sandals, when they were unceremoniously just dismissed for whatever reason, all boils around economics, Reverend Dr. Moss, and the oppression of our people. But to keep it in perspective, we don't seem to recognize that it was the worker, the man on the street of whom you spoke, that really got to the point where they said enough is enough, as it were with Pompey. He said, I'm not moving. My family is not moving to Cat Island. We're going to stay where we are because we believe that we earn the right to be in Exuma. That was an uprising. Dr. Curry will tell you the story of poor Black Kate, this 16 or 17-year-old girl who just defied the masters, that she had enough of the oppression, and they punished her, Sibi. That was an impetus that caused them to move to the emancipation, I'm told, because it was debated back in London. That is the resistance of our people. And so we move, and even Dr. Curry will also tell us the historical facts about what happened down in Inagua at the Morton Salt Plantation in 1937, I believe it was, or thereabouts, where they had a strike with the workers resisting oppression again. Burma Road he mentioned, and on and on. So I'm saying that it is always from the belly of the people. And you said it absolutely correctly. In '53, when the PLP was established as a party formed by 3 coloreds, don't forget that, Stevenson, Cartwright, and Taylor. These were what we will call today Conky Joes.
That's right.
But they had an issue with the then oligarchy. So they formed themselves into a party. But that came as a result of the Citizens Committee, led by the men like Dr. Walker, Dr. Cleveland Aeneas, Thompson, the magistrate, what was his name? Can't remember the first name. Anyway, it'll come to me. But these were men who stood up because we felt that there was an oppression when they wanted to even show Sidney Poitier as a doctor in a movie.
Maxwell Thompson and those.
Maxwell Thompson, that's the name. They said, we're going to show this movie to our people because you never wanted to lift up those from the grassroots, those from the bottom of the totem pole. But it's always when the people have had enough that they will rise up and stand up and come against the oppressors. And so this is where I believe we need to get the story correct. It's not always putting the politician up front. It's putting the foundation of the people having enough of the oppression that they will, and you made the point, more than economics, survival. That was the issue.
I'm going to ask you to comment on a statement that I'm going to make, both of you. Do you think that the majority rule day story has been too sanitized? I'm going to explain. Too sanitized. The narrative is always the same, always operating from the higher echelon of
By sanitized, you mean politicized?
Well, not so much politicized, but more the establishment seemed to take the dominance in that. I'll tell you what I mean. We always talk about Burma Road riot, but very few of us know the names of the people who were involved, who died. You see, we have to put a personal face on this. We have the names, you know, we know the names. Those who were taken to court, those who suffered personal deprivation. But you say, oh, the Burma Road riot, a lot of people can't even relate to that because there are descendants of those people who suffered and died in our society.
Yes.
You talk about Paul Black, Kate, and all those others, unless we know their story and put a more human face on it. We tend to talk about, oh, the election of 1967, one side had 18, the other 18, and two people went over there and created, and that's where. But let's talk about those persons who toiled in the sun, who gave up a lot of their opportunities. Address them.
Well, CB, as you know, under another organization of which you and I both are members, we've been agitating for this kind of history to be taught on a mandatory basis in all of the schools. Thank God for people like Dr. Chris Curry.
Absolutely.
Because he's writing, and he's writing the history of our people. I know this for a fact, because he's in the process of completing another book now, where we will talk about these issues, and hopefully we get them into the schools from the primary school level. As a matter of fact, this morning I had the opportunity to speak at one of the primary schools, Aubrey Sales. And one of the questions that one of the teachers asked me, where could we get this information at the level of the babies, the children, the 6 and 7 and 8 year olds, so that they could understand it? And Dr. Curry, forgive me, but I referred them to you. So they're going to be coming to you so that you can put it in a form, I would imagine, or at least help them to put it in a form that the young people will have an opportunity to learn about these historical facts.
Each year at Majority Rule Day, we spread out to the various schools.
Yes.
And like Freddie said, I spoke at C.R. Walker this morning, and it was amazing. Oh. You had over 1,000 students standing.
Yes.
Standing up.
Same situation.
The silence.
That's right. Incredible.
Showed the interest they had in what was being said.
Yes.
Our people are hungry, thirsty.
Including the teachers.
Everybody.
They want the information.
Everybody. They want this information. It's not available.
Not available.
It's basically capsulized. Just everybody knows the narrative.
But it's almost as if we're ashamed of it. See, I got to get real, man.
Yeah.
See, we've been agitating for this at least for about 15 years.
Yes. And we don't want people
and we went to the highest level.
And we want people to understand, like I told the folks at C.R. Walker was in Parliament for over 20 years before the PLP was even formed.
Yes.
So these stories. See what happened? The PLP was formed by the men who you said, and they were dissatisfied with the status quo, and they wanted a change. But I have a feeling they were willing to change it from within the system. The truth is, the progressives, those people, Myla Butler and those who are already in the fight, before that time, the progressive just overwhelmed them and took control of the organization as I see it.
Now, let me say what I have to say.
Yes.
I went to QC yesterday and I spoke to the primary school. What amazed me, much like the stories y'all are sharing, and I was speaking to primary school kids. We're talking grade 5 and 6 students. I talked for about 20 minutes and I spoke to them basically what I said earlier, I gave to them. You know, we had probably half an hour of Q&A.
Yes.
And the principal had to stop the kids because they just had question after question after question. They didn't, if it was up to me, we could have gone for another 2 hours. It just shows you the amount of interest our young kids have in hearing
their stories.
A history that is not perfuming the past. And let me tell you what I mean by that. And getting back to you, because we have sanitized our history for far too long. What I mean by that is we have two master narratives that need to be done away sooner than later. The first narrative is that Bahamians are docile, acquiescing, quintessent people. We just give in, we're passive, we don't fight for anything. If you look at the narrative of what we've shared up to this point in this show, from Pompey to Corino to Dick to Kate to all of these individuals, Matilda, and there are many more, they all were fighting for freedom, for something. And it didn't stop with abolition of slavery. We talked last week about the role of the lodges, all right, in the friendly societies. They marched every year up to Government House and presented grievances to the governor. In 1880, they even took over Trinity Methodist as a symbolic act. What I want to argue is, there was politics in the Bahamas before the PLP.
Yes.
Bahamians were agitating for change before they formed a political party. And let's not forget, we didn't discuss this last week, the influence of Marcus Garvey and his black nationalist organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which had at least 2 chapters in the Bahamas, was absolutely significant to gaining people's awareness of their rights or the rights that they were denied and getting them to think consciously about agitating for change. In the 1930s and the 40s, many blacks who went off to work, whether it was during the early period of the Miami craze or later on the contract, were exposed to those black nationalist ideas. They come back, they're going to agitate for change. Thaddeus Stute, Jackson Burnside. They're going to form a committee called the Citizens Committee to fight to make sure that film starring a black doctor is shown at the Savoy, No Way Out. Why? Because it showed, this is why Bay Street didn't want it, it showed an intelligent, educated black man in a starring role.
To be a Bahamian.
And who had as subordinates white people working for him. How powerful an image.
Didn't want to show that.
And they didn't want to show that, but they fought for it, the Citizens Committee. So what I'm trying to show you is we I think, miss a great opportunity to showcase a powerful representation of our people as fighters for change. Rather than giving into a master narrative that said we're docile and acquiescing, we need to show that we've always had, as a tradition in our country, people who are willing to stand up and to fight for what's right.
And these are the stories, CB, that have to be told. These are the stories that will put the self-esteem and self-worth into our youth. And these are the stories that will help us to lift our country to the point where we would understand that we have a wealth of history, a wealth of richness that we can't find anywhere else, you know. Because don't forget, he mentioned Marcus Garvey. But in that story, you must also say and mention a Dr. Robert Love, who was his mentor.
And was a Bahamian.
And was a Bahamian. You must also mention that same narrative that Dr. Martin Luther King came here to talk to us to find out how are we going to take our nation without violence.
You talk about Robert Love.
He came here for refuge.
Very few Bahamians know about Robert Love.
Story.
How many Bahamians know that we have a bust of Robert Love at UB?
I don't know.
See, we don't
but
know
I'll
that.
say this much. Robert Love left the Bahamas. An eminently qualified man. He was a priest.
And a doctor.
A doctor.
Medical doctor.
He left the Bahamas.
And a Pan-Africanist.
He went to Haiti, where he reached a higher echelon of the Haitian government. He left Haiti, I'm not sure it was willingly, but he left Haiti and he went to Jamaica and did the same thing. So much so that he is honored in Jamaica more so than his birthplace.
Very few Bahamians even
Isn't
know
that sad?
anything about
I
it.
want to add one last dimension. He got his medical degree in Buffalo, New York.
Yes.
You know anything about Seneca Falls and Upper State
Yes,
New
yes,
York?
yes, yes.
That is where they founded the NAACP. And there was a lot of reform movements in that area around black activism. So he was a part of that movement.
That's where he got
in that area.
got
And then
his
he
exposure.
moved to Haiti, as you rightfully pointed out,
So
ended
are
up in
these
Jamaica.
wonderful stories that we could relate to our children so that they can aspire to become world changers,
But you talk
like the
about-
Robert Loves,
That's
like
right.
the Marcus
And local
Garveys,
people, Sir
like
Clifford.
the Albert Williamses, and the list, Sidney Poitier, and the list goes on and
You
on.
mentioned these Bahamians over there, Burnside, basically getting that awakening,
Yes.
that national spirit.
Yes.
Sir Clifford, in his book, says that that's where he was
Yeah.
put on the road. He was on the contract picking fruits
Yes.
and exposed to the
Absolutely.
injustices,
Exposed.
and
That's
listening,
right. That's right.
and listening to some of the progressives over there.
Right.
When he got elected over there to be chairman of a committee. So when he returned to the Bahamas, he was ready.
CB, to a lesser degree, precisely one of the reasons I came home. When you are exposed to that overt racism.
Yeah.
See, it was here, but it was kind of insidious. And you know what I find even today, listening to some of the talks that over the various radio stations over the last few days, I hear people talk about we should forget about that part of our history.
No way.
We should push that aside. And why do we want to talk about racism? We got to talk about it so that we could stamp it out once and for all, and people could understand that there is nothing wrong with exposing the travesties of what we came through as a people.
Well,
so that it will never ever happen again, like the Jews.
Yeah, we have to
Yeah.
open this up. We're going to continue shortly after this break. Folks, don't go away. We've got a lot more interesting things to give you.
Only love can save us now.